this is Paul Acevedo of Windows Phone Central.
And I'm Board Pfeiffer, and I'm the lead programmer and one of the designers on Skulls of the Shogun.
Cool. So, Borat, how did you end up working on Skulls of the Shogun?
Jake, who's the CEO of 17-Bit and kind of the creative director for the game, and I, as well as Ben, our other sort of third core team member, we all met working at EA, working on big budget games. We were working on this Spielberg game that was this huge action RPG first-person shooter. Well, not a first-person game, very immersive kind of thing. That got canceled, and we kind of went our own sort of separate ways. And then Jay came to us with the idea for Skulls, and we really dug it. There wasn't not a lot of games like that, and we really wanted that kind of, really wanted to play that game, basically.
And now that Skulls is out, how do you feel about it, about the project as a whole?
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty happy with it. The reception, critically and user reviews and stuff have been pretty good. We're really happy with that. I'm really happy we got a 9 from Eurogamer. My last game that I worked on was that shipped was a PS3 launch title, and it got a 4 from Eurogamer. So
they're picky, notoriously picky. Skulls of the Shogun launched on 3 Microsoft platforms. So can you give us an idea of how each version did in relation to each other?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I can't talk actual sales numbers, but relatively speaking, the Windows Phone version was actually the best by a decent bit. I'm gonna guess about probably about a third were Xbox, and not maybe half a sixth were Windows 8, and then the rest are pretty much Windows Phone at this point. It's kind of my guess. I haven't seen the most latest figures either, so. But yeah, we're pretty happy with we weren't sure what to expect, with Windows Phone, and there's no good numbers of how many Windows Phones are there, so yeah, I'm definitely pretty happy with that.
And what are some of the challenges you faced with developing it for multiple platforms?
Yeah, it was definitely difficult just, to get on the original Windows 7 phone. It was pretty straightforward, just with X and A. We're really, that's one of the reasons we chose X and A to begin with. Before Microsoft even announced that they were going to make a phone, we were like, well, if they make a phone, they're just going to use X and A, and sure enough it did, and that was a pretty straightforward process. That was pretty good. And then Windows 8 came out, and they didn't support X and A, so we had to use Monogame, which is an open source version of X and A, which was still fairly straightforward to do, but it was just more time. And then the real challenge, I think, with Windows 8 was just all the different ARM tablets. There's lots of different ones. They have different performance characteristics, so we just had to get a bunch of them and try it out and figure out there's code in the game to kind of when you start up, it kind of tries to do a bunch of stuff rendering wise and figure out what the tablet can support, and then changes it dynamically.
Now that the game has been out for a little while, I'm sure you've discovered some bugs. Can you tell us about anything that will be fixed in the future?
Yeah. So I mean, there's lots of fun stuff. I mean, especially with Windows Phone 8. So Windows Phone 8 didn't come out by the time we had started the kind of certification process and finalizing the game. The Windows Phone 8 wasn't yet released, so we never got to run the game on Windows Phone 8. So there's some bugs just with your autosaves. You might not get monks that should appear on the round if you ran an autosave that would have loaded a monk, that kind of thing. And there's also just more. There's some kind of up-res art, so some of the bigger Windows 8 phones, like the Nokia 920, has a much bigger screen, so we can't really do much about the overall resolution, but we kind of up-res a bunch of our assets and fonts and that kind of stuff to make it look a bit better on that. And then there's a bunch of just kind of async sort of error handling, where there's we ran into issues with Microsoft's cloud storage servers weren't necessarily working, so your async games would start to desync because you would load an old version of your game because it hadn't saved properly. So there'll be better kind of error handling to detect that, and it'll tell you, and it'll also let you retry. Right now, you have to replay your turn because it was too difficult at the end of the kind of development process to go back and add that sort of handling to retry immediately was a bit difficult, taking a fair chunk of time. So we've done that. So now, if something goes wrong, you just hit retry and go again.
What's the timeline looking like on the Windows Phone update?
Yes, so we just this past Saturday we sent them hopefully the last version. We'll see. All the known issues should be fixed, and so they're going to test it this week. And if they don't find anything else, then we'll go into certification with it. So hopefully, like a few weeks. It's pretty hard to tell like when, just because we'll only know basically a few days before it's ready. So whenever it goes through and finishes certification. So, but hopefully in a few weeks at the very least.
And what about the other platforms? They also have updates coming?
Yeah, that's the other challenge. Just all the updates have to go out at the same time.
So now that 17-bit has shipped a game for all three Microsoft platforms, including Windows Phone, do you think that you guys will work with Windows Phone and Windows 8 again in the future?
Yeah, it's hard to say. I mean, right now it's like super early. 17-bit, Jake, creative director on Skulls, he's busy with a few people like prototyping the new thing, and they're kind of figuring out like what it would be best on. So they're considering that. I mean, we're definitely happy with Windows Phone in terms of as a mobile sort of marketplace. I mean, I think there's they're definitely. It's hard to tell how many there are. There's no real stats, but we're pretty happy with the sales there. So, in terms of like launching, compared to like launching on iOS, where it's like super crowded and hard to get attention.
What kind of projects do you personally have lined up for the future?
Yeah, so the way we work at 17-bit is sort of like a collaboration, and Jake and Ben and I kind of came together to work on Skulls, which is Jake's game, and then Ben and I both have other games we'd like to make, so we may not work full-time directly on the next 17-bit thing. And Jake also wants to move the studio to Japan, so that's exciting, but at the same time Ben and I are in Los Angeles, we quite like it there. So yeah, I mean, the next game I want to work on is actually a very like sort of serious strategy RPG, set and like kind of dealing with like political issues and that kind of stuff. So, and then I think Jake, definitely wants to kind of keep pursuing that sort of like retro, but with a modern sort of twist, kind of vibe to it. Modern, kind of older genres, but with modern tech and AI and graphics and all that kind of stuff. So.